I've done videos about relationships, including large age gap relationships. Mostly they were focused on not making assumptions, though it's fine to have concerns in some cases. But they were also about getting my own thoughts together about where love comes in and not being limited to modern Western cultural norms. I've also mentioned things that people in an age gap relationship should be concerned about because, whether they both feel in love or not, they at least should be aware of and discuss many of these issues. So this video will just focus specifically on those and other concerns. Maybe commenters can add more. It's easy for the man to just be interested in a much younger woman, since she'll generally be more attractive than women closer to the age of the older man. And it's probably easy, at least for a woman from poverty, to feel love towards a much older man who can provide for her. Now, whether it can last is a different question, and the potential problems I'll talk about may well bear on that issue. For example, in isolation, the relationship may seem fine. But when you make a small extension and factor in the situation where the man may be older than the girl's parents, that could create problems down the road. Might just be a psychological factor, but it can still matter. I mean, suppose the ages are 22 and 50, but the parents are around 44. I may be wrong, but I just think that may be a bigger issue than if the parents are 60 or more. It just seems a bit odd if you can literally expect your husband to die before your parents. Another, more important age issue is that the wife's friends are almost certainly much younger than the man and his friends. I can see real issues in social gatherings. You go to a party thrown by your wife's friends, and there you are at 50 or more, and all the other people are in their 20s. You may well get along quite well with your younger wife, but it may be quite different with her friends in such a situation. What do you have that is in common just for casual conversation? Not to mention the issue of possibly her friends thinking you are taking advantage of her. Even if they don't say it, there can still be an undercurrent of negativity. Same thing if the party is thrown by the husband's friends. Now she is the odd person out. The other men may just be thinking what a lucky guy you are, but I bet a lot of their wives will be thinking negative things about you and or about your wife. I've heard similar issues in mixed race marriages. The couple got along fine, but other people, possibly including parents, created so many problems that the marriage ended anyway. Since it seems a lot of these age gap marriages involve a woman from a poor Asian country, you not only have the age gap, but also the racial difference, which, like it or not, some of your friends won't like. They may never speak out in a blatant way, but they can still send negative signals, little by little creating friction. And economics comes into play. There are differences in experience because of age, culture, education, and even your economic background. Automatically coming into an age gap relationship means that, irregardless of friends, there is the issue of your own different experiences and interests. At first you may not care. Love can blind you, or at least infatuation can. But how does that work out over a period of years? That young, attractive young woman that you are infatuated with, and maybe even think her lack of knowledge about things you know well is cute, may become irritating over time. Or the girl may just start to feel more and more that she can't keep up. Again, since many of these relationships involve Westerners and Asian women, what about culture? I'm not in a good position to give examples of many of those things, but to take one example, you expect your wife to be honest, but she may fib a bit to save face. Heck, even your Western tendency to be at least reasonably on time may clash with your wife, who is a devotee of Filipino time. I happen to be kind of fanatical about that. I don't mind wasting my time by being early to appointments. That's my choice. But it bugs me a lot if someone is late and wastes my time. Then there are other cultural differences, such as food. She may be a great cook, as long as it is rice and certain Asian dishes and seasonings. Using myself as an example again, I'm big on beef, chicken, and less often fish or some pork. I'm not a fan of rice, much preferring baked or mashed potatoes. I don't care for many seasonings. For example, I pretty much don't care for marinated steak, though I love steak. Asian seasonings are generally not on my list of preferred tastes. So how much is the wife willing to learn to prepare the things I like? And is it fair for her to normally do that, but not have the food she prefers? I suppose some men think it is a job of the wife to please her husband. I have a problem with that simply because it is one-sided. Yes, I think the wife should want to please her husband and make some sacrifices. I also think the husband should want to please his wife and also make sacrifices. It may well be that an issue like this can be worked out to everyone's satisfaction, but you still need to consider it in advance. I'm not an adventurous eater, so it probably is a bigger deal to me. But even if I was fine with more things, I would still have my preferred food. So, yep, if I was single and looking for a wife from another culture, we need to talk about these things. How about the children? Even a young woman who says she is fine without having any, and at your age you don't want new children, will she still feel that way 10 years later, especially if you are likely to die decades before she will? Even in the West, some modern feminists who are all focused on career suddenly find out that they aren't so happy later on when their clock has been ticking too long. In some ways, it's like a difference in religion. Both partners may start out saying it's okay if they believe different things, but suddenly, if they do have kids, it isn't okay at all. After all, if you differ on the way to get to heaven, you're far less likely to think it doesn't matter when it comes to what your kids are taught. It probably will matter a lot. And what are the increased risks of not having a healthy baby? I found it kind of hard to find useful stats on this. They'll usually give figures like, if over 40 years old, the risk increases by some percentage. But that isn't real helpful unless you know the normal risk. Suppose they say it increases 50%. That sounds really, really bad. But what if the starting percentage is 0.5%? Well, then a 50% increase only makes it 0.75%. Not so bad after all. I've been quite surprised how most sites I've checked don't give this needed basis of any comparison. My main point is that you can't just consider how you feel about things now, but have to consider how they may change. A wise man won't just accept that his wife doesn't want kids for all time. There will always be a considerable risk that she will change her mind. And if you do agree to have kids, what about those kids if you have a pretty good chance of dying before they are even adults? How does that affect their lives? Then there is the issue of what you can do with them when they are really active and you may be in no shape to do the things a typical father does. Do the kids at school tease them about you being more of a grandpa? All kinds of little things that can mount up. Since you are likely to die long before your wife, are you able to leave enough behind for her to move on with her life without her and any of your kids falling into poverty? Especially if you have her being a stay-at-home wife where, once you are gone, she is too old to have much of a chance of a decent job. A marriage shouldn't only be about providing for someone while you are alive, especially if it is almost guaranteed that your spouse will be on her own far longer than in normal marriages. You even have to factor in where to live if the marriage is to someone from another country. Sure, there is a biblical view of how your wife will leave her parents to follow her husband, and even in the West, a couple may end up living far from the parents and rarely see them. It gets more complicated when married to a foreigner. Rarely see them could easily become never see them. If you live in your country, do you make arrangements for some visits, even if just once every year or so? This brings up a cultural thing again. Using the Philippines as an example, the families tend to be much closer than they are in the West. I consider this to be a very good thing, but there is no doubt that it can also bring problems. There is no difficulty to find vloggers warning about scheming families out to take your money. As I've said before, there are a few good things that can't be twisted. It is wrong for them to do so, but it is also wrong to assume that is typical. Such things vary on a case-by-case basis. Marriage is a risk. Marriages involving different cultures, religions, races, economics, and yes, ages are more of a risk. At least pursue them with your eyes open and talk things out. Thanks for watching, and don't let the trolls stop you from speaking out.